such a thrill to be here with all of you today to talk about the Middle Years Development Instrument. It's a measure of child well-being and resiliency during middle childhood. It's been a central part of my life, at least for more than a decade, since it began in British Columbia. So I'm going to, just to give you a bit of, here, let's just make sure my internet is all my PowerPoint is working here. I also do want to do acknowledgement of the territory in which I'm presenting from the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And if anybody knows, I'm over by the Peony is where I'm sitting in my house. Over here. So just a little bit, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Human Early Learning Partnership and the Middle Years Development Instrument team, and a bit of the context for the MDI, why we need it now and what we need to do now. An overview of the MDI and some question and answers I'm hoping we will have time for. And I presented this for all of you. So first of all, you'll all get the slides so you could have all of this information for yourselves. But I realize that so many of you are going to be, people will come to you and ask questions like, why should we do this? Why is it important? How will we use the data? So I'm hoping to provide you with that information so you can then be the ones who go along. But there's support all along the way. As Janet said, both Michelle and Jamie are involved, and us from the HELP team. And also, just so you know, there is a 2-pager, a research brief about the MDI created specifically for FISA and all the associations, and we will provide that with you. It's just a 2-pager really highlighting some of the important factors about that, but I just want to call your attention to that. So HELP at the University of British Columbia is an interdisciplinary research institute that really has a vision of all children thriving in healthy societies. Through the years, we have a monitoring system that looks at child development all the way from 18 months when they're toddlers through the Toddler Development Instrument and to the YDI, which is the Youth Development Instrument. And many of you might be familiar already with the EDI, the Early Development Instrument. But the MDI actually is grades 4 to 8 now. It actually just expanded it, but I'll be talking just about the MDI, which is the Middle Years Development Instrument. Our wonderful team consists of Merritt Gilbert, Kim Mascarenas, Maria Roser, and Alex Gist, who is our MDI team at HELP. Just a little bit of why do we need to know about child well-being right now? And hopefully you have guessed it already, that certainly it's a context, all of us will need to know, how are their children doing and how do we find out how they're doing? We know with this current context in British Columbia right now, there's no time like any other really to be understanding children's health and well-being. We know that all children and families, but particularly those that are most vulnerable, are at risk of experiencing increased challenges, and that the MDI data can provide an opportunity to hear from the children themselves about their well-being and the assets that will be valuable as they navigate through this unprecedented time. One thing I also want to just mention is that it isn't just if children are experiencing stress, because we know that stress is contagious. Research that we've done with teachers in classrooms found that those classrooms in which teachers had the highest levels of stress and burnout also had children who had high levels of stress as indexed by salivary cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So if you think about children are in stressful environments at home and coming into school, that we really need to understand their well-being to address the context to help them thrive and flourish. And we know this is actually from CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, kind of the main place for all things social and emotional learning, that now is really the time to build on social and emotional learning, to take the time to build partnerships and deepen your understanding, design opportunities for adults to connect, heal, and cultivate their own social emotional competence, create emotionally and physically safe, supportive, and engaging learning environments for all students, and then using data. And the whole idea is that this will provide, we can't just guess. If we actually have the data and the information, we can really move forward and move to action. So what now? My area of research, some of you might have seen me speak before. I get around in BC and other places, but I've really been focusing my attention for the past few decades on social and emotional learning, with the idea, really starting off as a teacher myself. I was a middle school teacher, and then went to teach in alternative high school, and then worked with younger children in different settings. And I realized how you feel affects how and what you learn. And that was so central. So we know what now, we know this quote, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. This importance of social and emotional learning. And this was actually said by Aristotle. So this notion of SEL is not so new. Actually, Aristotle was around centuries ago. But we know, and what we found from recent science in the past decade, is that these social and emotional skills are the essential skills. They're foundational. And I remember hearing during the lockdown of someone saying that, in fact, a teacher saying, like, social and emotional learning is not another thing on my plate. It is the plate, that we know that they're foundational. And we need to know how children's social emotional well-being is doing in order for them to effectively learn. And we're really moving away from intervention, waiting to students that are struggling and failing and falling into the water and throw out the life preserver, to one that's really about prevention, equipping them with the tools and knowing what they need to be successful and stay afloat when they hit those rough waters. So social and emotional learning in particular, and that's what the MDI is really one central part of the MDI is about. SEL is a growing movement around the world. CASTLE, or the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning, as I mentioned before, really has identified these 5 dimensions of social and emotional learning that includes things like self-awareness, being aware of your strengths and weaknesses, self-management, or regulating those impulses, social awareness, having empathy and compassion for others, relationship skills, being able to resolve conflicts peacefully, and then responsible decision-making. And actually, I think about responsible decision-making right now is really think about how your behaviors affect those of the others. And now, like no other time are we so much focused on really thinking about our own behaviors with mask wearing, with the physical distancing. And it actually, of course, I have to mention Dr. Bonnie Henry, who really talks about be kind, be calm, be safe, which is really SEL. And we also really know that these social emotional skills are like fitness, like we need to have them intentionally promoted. So a couple of research findings before I talk about the MDI, which is these are the foundation, is that we know that these social emotional skills are malleable and can be taught through neuroplasticity and recent information on the brain. We know that social and emotional skills predict well-being and life success. And would you believe, this is quite groundbreaking, that the recent science is really showing that these skills are more important than academic achievement in predicting life success and how well you do, what kind of job you get, your job satisfaction, your relationships. Dan Goleman, who brought this to our attention in 1995 when he wrote the best-selling book called Emotional Intelligence, really highlighted the fact, and this is the idea that your IQ only accounts for 10 to 15% of your life success. So it's these other things like being able to persevere, being able to get along with others and resolve conflict, being able to manage your stress. These are the factors that predict your success. So we know that data and learning data can be a catalyst for action. When you have that information, you can really begin to move forward. And we know also that what is not assessed is really not addressed. And that's a common saying. So the MDI, what is the MDI? The Middle Years Development Instrument. It's a self-report survey for children in grades 4th and 7th grade, and it's now moved to grades 4 to 8. And it's strengths-based. It's linked to health and well-being, social emotional development, both inside and outside the school. So it looks at children's development across multiple contexts, the whole child, in schools and families and neighborhoods, and as well as after school time. The MDI is also really based on the science of resiliency. It was developed with both researchers and community partners, as well as students themselves, to really figure out what are those differences that make a difference. And coming to one core notion of resiliency is that relationships are central, are really critical to everyone's success. And I just love this quote, that every child requires someone in his or her life who's absolutely crazy about them, by Yuri Braun from Brenner. It's children's voices. We hear from them. When we were developing the MDI, we told them We need you to be our teachers. We need you to teach us about your life so we can help make a better world for you. And it also aligns with the Article 12 of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, that children have a right to give their opinion, be listened to by the adults around them. It also focuses on after school time, which we know is such a critical part of child development. You know, this idea of how children spend their after school hours, and what other opportunities they have to develop new social skills, new interests, meaningful relationships, and caring for others. And then why is it important to have data on children during middle childhood? Like, so what is it about middle childhood? Well, we know that middle childhood is a critical transitional period of development. It's a time in which there's new cognitive development, peer relationships become more important, the whole idea of children's changing mindsets about competence. And so it could be a path toward risk or resiliency. And to learn about their well-being could really help put into programs and practices that help build resiliency in terms of transitions. The MDI, just briefly, has 5 dimensions that include physical health and well-being, social and emotional development, use of after-school time, school experiences, and connectedness. And this, I'm not going to go through all of this, but just gives you an idea. It actually has so many different factors that it looks at in terms of all the different factors of social emotional. It looks at physical health and well-being, both from eating breakfast to exercise to screen time to good sleep and how many days a week you have meals with an adult at your home, as well as connectedness to adults at school, at home, and in the neighborhood, as well as peer relationships and friendships as well. And we also have a new one on there last year was developed. It's on help seeking, really finding out who do kids want to go to when they have problems when they're stressed or need help. We have an index of well-being that includes a dimension of thriving, medium to high well-being, and then low well-being. So you're able to get a snapshot. And I should emphasize, this is not an individual assessment tool, so it isn't like you get a score for a particular child. The summary is at the school level, so you really get a snapshot of how the kids in the entire school, which really makes more sense in terms of prevention and universal programs. There's an asset index, so you get to find out how kids are doing on these 4 dimensions of adult relationships, nutrition and sleep, peer relationships, and after school time. And the darker the color, the richer the soil, means that more of that asset is present. So from moving to action, you know, the MDI really helps you understand students' perspectives about their lives inside and outside of school. It catalyzes discussions about students' connectedness to adults in school. You can connect it to the curriculum for assessment of student learning. You can evaluate your school's efforts to promote social and emotional learning, for example, and build partnerships with community organizations in your district. And I should say too, I'd have another one to add, which is the importance of connecting to families. Connecting to your families to really help them understand their children and to get them engaged in their children's well-being as a focus. So here I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to talk about some key messages. First, that the MDI results are reported in ways to have schools and communities to move to action to improve student well-being. So there's each of you will get a separate school report just on your children, and then there'll be a association report, and then a larger association report. So you'll get different levels of reporting as well. You can examine differences in your students' social emotional competencies, and I'm just going to go through these quick. We have everything's like these infographics, so you right away get to see how the kids are doing compared to others in the association, on optimism, empathy, and these are all of them. I'm just giving you an example. So pro-social behaviors such as helping, self-esteem, happiness, absence of sadness, absence of worries, and self-regulation. You can examine students' well-being at this grade 4 and grade 7 level. So you get like a snapshot. So what you'll do is you'll get like a well-being of this infographic of what percentage of your students are thriving, which percentage of them are medium well-being, which percentage are low, and how does that compare to the association, all the kids in the association. You'll have assets. So you could also, and this is really an important dimension of the MDI, that you get to learn about what are the strengths that your children have and what are the ones that they have more, you know, stretches, that you want to know more challenges, because these assets are developed. These are things you can do something about. So here, for example, grade 4, this was all participating districts in BC last year, that 86% of children were involved in some sort of after school activity. 83% had positive adult relationships, 84% positive peer relationships, and 66% had good nutrition and sleep. So you see right away, oh, well, nutrition and sleep is, we need to put more efforts there. Or connectedness to adults. So one question on the MDI is asking children, are there any adults at your school who are important to you? We don't give the definition of important. The kids can have it themselves. And here you see in this, in the overall district, for, I'll just highlight the grade 4, was 76% said there's 2 or more at their school, 9% said 1, and 15% said no one. And you see it changes for grade 7s. And just so you know, it's so fascinating. The research is really showing us that it isn't just having one important adult in a child's life. You could actually have, it's better to have 2 or more. The staircase we see, you know, the kids who seem to be having the greatest level of thriving on these dimensions are those who had 2 or more adults. And I just want to show you one example. And then I'm going to kind of end, because I want to make sure there's questions here, is, and I'd like to end with this. There's more slides and I could go through things, but I wanted to do this. So there's a district, Alberni, that actually got their results from their MDI for one dimension. So they looked at the reports and they saw that when they looked at their grade 7s, they found that 53% of the grade 7 said there's no one at their school who's important to them. Well, they kind of freaked out. They thought, how? Over half of the kids say there's no one important. We work so hard. How could they not think we're important? But they decided to really put in intentional efforts to try and connect to the students. So they did all sorts of things to find out what makes an adult important, to find out how to connect with students, you know, even just saying hi in the hallway. It's so fascinating what kids, when you ask them what do teachers do to show they care. It's interesting, several years ago, we did a study and found the single most important thing the kids said, this is high school students, said a teacher who says hello to me in the hallway by my name. It's like, you know, you're being seen, that someone knows you exist. So anyway, so Alberni, so we'll just drum roll kind of thing. So they put all these efforts in place and they tried to connect with students and to see, and then they got their MDI results for the next year. And as you could see, they went from 34% of students saying 2 or more to 51%. So they basically flipped their findings from the 51%, you know, from 53% saying no one to 51% saying 2 or more, and then reduced the 38%. And then they, again, continued their efforts. They didn't stop there. They didn't say like, oh, we did that. Okay, we're going on to something else. They really did that. So I think I'm going to end here just because I want to make sure there's time for questions. I have more slides and that you could provide, you know, just so you know, we have about, 14 articles on the MDI that show it's valid, reliable. You can count on kids to give us honest answers. But I think what I'll do now is I'm going to stop sharing and we'll sort of go to, I'm respectful. You guys all have had a long day today. So I just want to be respectful of your time and see what kind of questions you might have. I think there's one in that. Why was it changed from 4th to 8th grade? Was that in response to COVID? Oh, no, you know, we actually, did you all hear me ask that? Anyway, so I read the chat question. No, it actually was, the reason we changed it before COVID, we had actually made that decision last year. And it was really due to the fact that there was a lot of concerns about grade 4 and 7 and the FSAs. And so a lot of people, and student learning survey. And so people were concerned that those 4th and 7th grades were kind of overtaxed in terms of their surveying. So we decided just to expand it 4th to 8th grade. More questions? You could either speak, or you could type it in. Okay, now I have to put my glasses on. Can you explain the different types of questionnaires or forms that can be completed? The two different types of questionnaires. Okay. Okay. Oh, someone asked.
Kimberly, I think it's referring to the FISA customized questions.
Oh, right. Oh, perfect. Thanks. So there's two that just actually really deal with and Merritt, I'll have you jump in here because you have worked, and Kim, wherever, I don't know if Kim's internet is working. Essentially, through a discussion with the executive of FISA, a couple of the questions that we asked, we wanted to be more customized toward FISA. One is specifically about gender identity. And one is, what was the other one, Merritt? Here, I'm just looking to Merritt to see. What was the other one that was modified?
Family composition.
It's about family composition.
Yeah, so just to make it, I think that they both essentially provide us with the same information, but they are more customized, I think, through the executive of making sure that people felt that that they would, the families, I think, would feel they were represented in how they approached it. That's my feeling. Merritt, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't really have anything else to add for that. I don't know, Janet, if you want to add more, but it was really to be as inclusive as possible and everybody feeling that comfortable with the surveys and the questions being asked of their children.
That is correct.
Yeah, so so I understand today, so this is great from Lorna. I see that, yes, I read that the Ministry of Education has changed their timing for the FSAs this year till January, February. So we will, you know, so this was brand new. So I have to say, I don't have the response yet. Essentially, we were, the idea is that we were going to have the MDI be January, February as well. So we will have to go back and have some discussions about the timing, the time frame for that, because we were trying to avoid, this is like been our thing to avoid, and now that, yeah, that just throws a bit of, yeah. So well, I will ask, you know, of what people, I'd love some feedback if people were like, we'd rather get it all done at one time, and we do the FSAs and we do the MDI, or we'd like the MDI to go a bit, have a bit of a longer open window. We can't, I know for sure we won't be able to administer it just because of parent permission forms and all of that kind of stuff before January. So we'll just have to see how we work that out. Merritt, do you have any intel?
No intel. I think it came as a bit of a surprise for all of us. And I think it's something that we will have to discuss what we can do, if anything, in order to make this, to give people more time, or I'm not sure yet, to be honest.
We wouldn't go into anything past spring break. I will say that right now, like that would be, just because the whole reporting thing, that's, you know, there's a whole domino effect and things like that. But, and I think someone had a really good question about the timing. You were considering that the timing, like, yes, you can do you could do a group, you don't have to do all the grade 4s all at once. You could take this group of 5, you could take this group of 10. No requirements specifically about how many, and if it has to be all at the same time. I'm just reading all this here.
Yeah. Do you want me to jump in every now and then, Kim? And
yeah, I'm just
one question, how
yeah.
long it is expected to take? And for grade 4s, we say 1 to 2 class periods, just because it depends on really on their ability to read. And so we see grade 4 usually take longer than grade 7, even if the survey is shorter. So.
Well, and the thing that's important, it's interesting, you know, we did that, used to do paper and pencil for the MDI, but since it's gone online, number one, I've just even noticed that even the grade 4s can do it quicker because they're more tech savvy than they were even 5 years ago, what grade 4s were like. But the other thing to keep in mind is if a teacher, you know, on the one hand, a teacher would read out loud and you go through, and there's an instructional survey that goes along for the teachers to go through. But there's also, if the kids have headphones, they can actually have each question read out loud to them on the MDI survey. So we have a button where they could push and the question will be read out loud to them as well. So that's one thing. Let me just see. So go on. Yes. So we're trying not to imagine that I wonder if schools have to go online again and that delay the rollout of the MDI. Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. We have been talking a lot about it, but we're just kind of like, okay, we have talked about the ability of being able to have the MDI be online. So, but we haven't crossed that bridge yet. But we do have the capability. The frame, is there any concern that changing the forms to two does not allow for the voices of all the students taking the survey? I think we've really tried, if you look at the two forms, I believe there's a way that all children will feel represented. That's my feeling. I think both allow for options. It's not a forced choice kind of thing. So they definitely could put in other things. So
Kimberly, can I also mention in the report that goes out that a lot of the demographic things are not part of the report that would go
Right.
out to schools. So that and the students will all be doing the exact same questions, the non-demographic questions of MDI.
That's a really good point. That's important. Yeah, many of the demographics we collect, but we don't put in the details in the report, like family composition and things like that as well. So those are for, okay. Arrange to pay for student participate through, students can arrange individually with the MDI team to their grade 7s participate at school costs. Did you hear that? That's it. Lorna said this. FISA has arranged to pay for grade 4 student participation through a Ministry of Education grant. Schools can arrange individually with the MDI team to have their grade 7 participate at the school's cost. Yes, that's true. And I guess, Merritt, they would contact you if they're interested in the grade 7, or for that matter, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8. And I guess, you know, I don't know. I think I love the questions that people have because it's really kind of getting into the details. So no one's questioning like, why should we have data on child well-being? So I appreciate no one asking me that question as well. Not all students are at school. There are students at school and others are in transition program from home. How is this being addressed? Yeah, I think that we haven't worked it out for kids to be doing it at home yet. I think that's a question we are in the midst of trying to answer. So hopefully in the next month or so, we will have more information.
And just to let people know that the FSA, they're working out an answer to that question as well for how will they participate if they're in that transitional group who are not in regular attendance. So yeah, that's great. We'll connect with them for sure to figure out what the plan is. But you know, the most important thing for us are two things, actually, not the most, but two things. One is that the children doing the survey really understand the question so that it's valid and reliable data. So we would ensure if for instance, if we went to it being administered online, we'd have to make sure that the teacher still would be administering the questions and read them out loud so that otherwise, if you have a child completing it on his or her own or their own, then you might think like, well, maybe their sibling is sitting next to them or you know, someone's helping them do that. So that would be one thing that we really would want to ensure. And of course, the other one, first and foremost, really is the privacy. So really having a secure server so the data are really private if they're being done online. Let's see if you indicated interest in other grades. Oh, here, this is just from Jamie. Thank you, Jamie, saying if you're interested in other grades, participate in the survey that went out. Michelle and I can connect you, provide further information. Here it says the training for someone at the school to administer the survey, will that be done over Zoom or will need to go somewhere to get certified trained? I think the whole plan is Zoom. Is that right? Michelle, Jamie? Merritt?
Yeah, Zoom.
Yeah.
We will do webinars or training Zoom. We will share a screen and we will give you the quick view. And we also always, record those sessions. So if you can't join the Zoom meeting, you can watch it on your own time.
Yeah, and the other thing, I think, you know, Jamie and Michelle are really helping, but what we find is like when people are administering the survey and they need to pick up the phone and call someone right away, that we're always there to answer that, if someone can't get logged in. I think I'm really interested, and I guess this is just something I was thinking for you all to know, like what, I feel fine for you to connect with us and Michelle and, Merritt and Jamie as well, about any parent concerns. We've really been tried to make sure parents know about the importance of the MDI. And so one of the things, and Michelle and Jamie will connect more with you about this, is really making sure the information is of course, about the MDI is communicated, but why you're doing the MDI, how important this is. And so we do have, I think on Discover MDI, we actually have these little snippets you could put in newsletters. It's like, did you know that children's well-being has a huge implications for their school success? So there might be some really important communication you want to already start getting out there to your parents about this information, about, because my experience, over the years, and as a parent myself, is some of this information about the importance of children's social and emotional development and their success in school and life isn't common knowledge in the way we know that, other things are. And so we really want to help you have that information for your parents, since they play such a big role in your schools. Well, for everyone's education, parents are central. Am I missing any questions? Oh, thank you, Becca. It's an incredibly important data to have for our students. Thank you for creating the instrument. I'm sure it was a huge undertaking. Oh, thank you so much, Becca. Yes, a labor of love. I will let you know, actually, this is so interesting. The MDI has probably been implemented with over 200,000 students, has been translated, is actually used around the world in Israel, so Hebrew, Australia, Croatia, Germany, UK, France, and it actually, the labor of love it started as me as a mom at my son's school, to be as a professor, to go knocking on the principal's door and say, what could be my parent contribution at the school? So that's actually, so the MDI actually started in 2003, because I, as a parent, was and with, my work focusing on child well-being, how could I help my school? So that was actually the beginning of the MDI. Anything else? I don't see any other questions.
Kimberly, I think that's an excellent story to end this one on. The idea that those small kernels, they start small and look where they can travel. And each of us are embedded in our own settings, our own schools, our own educational settings, and what you do out there matters. And here's a way for schools to start to show the impact in the best of ways on what you are doing. So let's close off this information session. As we introduced earlier, we now have Jamie Morris and Michelle Hussey helping out the FISA team. Jamie and Michelle are also school-based, but they're picking up a small contract with FISA to be the champions of the MDI, and they'll be reaching out to you more. So those of you on the call, if you haven't, I believe you probably have, but if you haven't yet done the survey questions that identifies a lead in your school and has a place for you to put down some more information, please do that. We'll send a reminder out to all schools tomorrow to complete that survey if they haven't had a chance to do it. But certainly on this call, we have people understanding the value of the work, and we're thrilled to have you here with us today. We will record this and put it on the FISA website, and you can then share that link to other people that might want to find out more. So have a lovely Tuesday, everyone. Thank you.
I did just want to mention before we, a great thank you to Kimberly and your MDI team there at UBC. Really appreciate that. Jamie and Michelle, Janet and Marina. And really, when FISA first heard about this, we were so excited. I think at the school level, you will now have data that will provide you the direction for your supports for students. From the FISA level, and one of the reasons that we were able to work with MDI and have these two different surveys that will provide us with data that we can share with government when it comes to funding and different supports that we put in place. So thank you all very much and really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. And just remember, we're here to answer questions and connect and all of that. So just so wonderful to have you all involved.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.